Merry meet and welcome to the 8th night of Kyphi. And for those of you who have been patiently waiting between 7 and 8, thank you for your patience of letting some time go by before I got back to recording. Life interrupted and I had to take a little break from my proper meditations on putting the Kyphi together. I could have rushed through the nights, but I like to take at least a full hour with each of the editions. And now, life has calmed down to where I can take that peaceful time again. The 8th night of Kyphi traditionally is Copal. I don't use Copal of all the wondrous, beautiful things that we can use in our incenses, and there is nothing more amazing and moving as the smell of Copal. It is an extremely endangered source. There are options to use for it, and one of the options to use for it is Pinion Pine Resin, and that is what this is. I am so happy with this new batch of Pinion Pine Resin because it is very earthy. It has bits of bark attached to it and dirt, and it is just, I've just enjoyed handling it. It has just been a delight to hold and feel, and it just feels wonderfully rich and earthy. So a little bit about the Copal / Pinion Pine that we are using and what its characteristics are in a traditional sense. Like so many of the ingredients we've used before, you will not be surprised to hear that cleansing and purifying is an important part of its history. This use of Copal, its history. Also, protection. Again, a very traditional, old style, old world, ancient use of a lot of these resins. Purifying and protecting. Both characteristics of the Copal and therefore the Pinion Pine that we're using in its place. Pinion Pine also has a very powerful correspondence that I have worked with that has to do with strengthening. It is the kind of strengthening, if you imagine this very hard resin, which when it first was brought from the pine was liquid and running and very pliant. The strengthening power of the Copal and the Pinion Pine is that it is taking something which is existing in some sense, but making it more firm. Think of the power of your convictions and how strength comes from that. It is strengthening in the sense of hardening. There is a source of strength which becomes more strong, in a way solidifies, which is the power of so many of the pine resins, and their alliance to strength has to do with the hardening. Not the hardening in the sense of becoming something hard that is a shell that protects you, but of the truth that you know that rises up within you, becoming the power of your conviction. And the strengthening of your intent, indeed your very soul, by your relationship to those things which you have, but you bring to the surface and make more strong. So it's that kind of strengthening, what rises up in you, which you make firm and strong. Healing is another traditional use for Copal and Pinion Pine resin, not one I have particularly worked with, but I wanted to mention it because it is traditional. Prosperity indeed is an aspect of the correspondences and the power of this botanical that I have worked with, in fact, like to work with regularly. Very powerful for me, works very, very well. It is prosperity in another shade, yet another shade of what prosperity might be. It is prosperity in being aware of opportunity. So it has in common, when we talk about the strengthening aspect of this, that something exists which you make more firm and more powerful. Prosperity is the same way. It is realizing an opportunity is there, being aware of the opportunity. So it is a prosperity possibility that exists, and the working with this botanical is making yourself aware that it exists. In other words, it keeps us from missing the opportunity. It's also about courage. And it's courage in the same sense of the strengthening aspects of it. It's what rises up in you. It is courage in the sense of righteousness. Copal and Pinion Pine resin are yet another botanical in this mix, which are fire. So when we talk about courage, we are talking about what rises up in you that you absolutely know, which gives you personal power. Your courage comes from knowing. Righteousness in the good sense of the word. There is a lighter aspect of these two also, which has to do with happiness. Happiness and celebration. Again, as in what we already have in the mix, it is happiness in the sense of mirth. Being happy, a state of happiness with no requirement or reason, just being happy and celebrating. And the last one, which we're going to spend a little bit more time on, when we look at the contribution that Copal-Pinion Pine resin is making to the Kyphi, is its power of invocation. And again, it's what is in and rises up. So invocation is a calling out, which is a power of these two. Used in meditation alone. The times in my life when I have felt a bit spiritually bereft and needed to just call out and remind myself that there is an answer, that I will be answered. There will be a response when I invoke the presence of the deities that I relate to. These resins have been a very important part of that to me, the power of invocation. It's the first step in invocation, though, the rising up and opening up right before the calling down is the power of Copal and Pinion Pine. So we're not going to be using a lot. It's only a half of a part that we're going to be using. So we don't need much of what is in my bowl there. I got a nice new supply of the Pinion Pine, so I'll have the luck of using it for a lot of things. And indeed, I think I will be working on it personally when it comes to strengthening. Something I want to work on in this turning of the wheel is increasing my power in the sense of acknowledging it is already there, and perhaps I have been ignoring it, or even worse, forsaken it. And just a reacquaintance process with my own powers, strengthening who I am. That's what I'm taking into this next turn of the year as one of my personal workings. So I have lots of Pinion Pine to work with. So let me get busy now. It won't take too long because I only need a half a part of the Pinion Pine. And I'll be back to you after it is ground. Okay, now we have our, it seems so scant compared to the quantities that we've done of some of the other ingredients, but we have our 1/2 a part of the Pinion Pine resin, which is our substitute for the Copal. So let's talk a little bit about its role in, I'm still pulling out little bits of sticks and stuff from the bark, its role in the Kyphi. As a reminder, frankincense connected us to what has come before. Sandalwood was our purifying agent. The storax, or the American sweet gum, and for those of you who have been having trouble finding the American sweet gum, benzoin is an excellent replacement for the Storex, so do keep that in mind. A little bit easier to come by. I didn't realize that American sweet gum was getting very difficult to come by until some of you told me the challenges you were having. I had an old supply, so I still had some. But by all means, benzoin is also good for this. So the Storex American sweet gum is relaxing, letting go and relaxing. And then we added myrrh, which is a reminder we are creatures not only of the physical, but of the spiritual. And from that place, the cedar was the as below, so above. We're connected here, and this is what we know, but we are aware of the fact that it is duplicated on the other side. Juniper. When we get to that place of being, our next step is to take on the attitude of welcoming. Along comes the galangal root. Then we pay attention to what comes next. And now we've come to the copal, the pinion pine resin. When we are paying attention, the Copal-Pinion pine ingredient is the movement of inspiration. When we're sitting there quietly in our meditations, in our prayers, in our circles, when we get to that quiet place, that perfect, beautiful, quiet place, we wait to see what moves through us. Copal, in this case the pinion pine resin, represents inspiration. I make this offering in the name of inspiration,